Okay, so the interesting thing is that my birth certificate says Elliott Lake. That's where I'm born. My friends think I was born on a houseboat because most people don't know that Elliott Lake is actually a town. My father was a jeweler and he had retail operations in some of the small towns up in northern Toronto. I'm the Elliott Lake baby. My other brother is the Sault Ste. Marie baby, etc. And my other brother is the Toronto baby. At some point, series of events, he is now selling jewelry in Toronto. So at the age of 7, we move into my grandmother's basement, and my dad had the privilege of selling a watch to a very famous broker in Toronto, who then recruited him into real estate. And my father himself became, top agent across Canada. Back then, they took the top agent, they made him a manager. So he became the top broker. I think, he would have been better off being the top agent instead of motivating, but his branch was tops across Canada, month after month. At some point, he transitioned into real estate, whereas I never thought to be in real estate. I had other interests. I was very entrepreneurial. As a young kid, I had lots of jobs, anything that you'd hustle, right? So I had a furniture business, had a window blind business. I was going to university. I wanted to go into another profession. But at some point, fate would have it, there was a subdivision of homes that wasn't being represented by the agents that were in attendance. They seldom showed up, and the builder just, at one point, fired the company. Because there was a personal relationship between my parents and the builder, my mother didn't know that my father had been fired. She got the information first. So she had, come into the house and saw me throwing around a basketball, and she sent me off to sit at this open house. And I go, why? She goes, well, because the agents never showed up. So I sat at the open house. The builder walked in. I thought he was a customer, and I tried to sell him the house. Did a very poor job. And then he finished with a, who the hell are you? He says, you must be, Marvin and Frida's son. And I go, I am. I go, why did you say that? He goes, because you don't know anything about this house. I was also in blue jeans and had a beat up car that I was doing body work on his driveway. So he says, do you own a suit? And I said, yeah. He says, well, it's good to know. He says, well, for now, I'd like you to leave my house. And I left. I was fired, but I really wasn't employed by him in the first place. So I went home, threw the basketball around. My mother asked why you're home. And I said, well, this is what happened. She goes, go up, put a suit, and go back. So I went up, put a suit, went back into the house, and again parked the car in the driveway. And he goes, what are you doing here? And I says, well, you don't have a salesperson. I think you need some representation. He says, well, it's a very nice suit, but what are we going to do about that car? I go, what do you mean? He says, I want that piece of crap off my driveway. As a matter of fact, would you think about buying a new car? I said, I would if I had money. He goes, okay, go over to Roy Foss, which was a Young and Steeles. Come back with the brochure that you'd buy, the car that you'd buy, if you had the money. I picked out this 1980 Grand Prix, black and gold. It was on the cover of the magazine. Brought it back to him, and he said, you know what? When you sell 12 houses, I will buy you that car. Until then, get that junker off my driveway. And then he proceeded to teach me how to sell his houses. The following week, a guy named Dennis Grayhurst came out, who was an advertorial writer for the Toronto Star. He explained to me what an advertorial was. And I said, interesting. He says, by the way, I like rye. And I said, oh, okay. Didn't understand what that meant. We did a tour of the house, took photography. I went home, told my father what had happened, his comment, and he says, the man would like a nice case of rye. So I took down the case of rye. I made the mistake of bringing it to his office, which he quickly wouldn't accept the rye. But on next Saturday, I was on the front section of the business, Toronto Real Estate Homes, and I sold 3 houses, and I went on to sell several others. I had forgot about the car. I had now been up to 15 sales. I'm coming home one day in my clunker, and as I'm coming up the driveway, there's my dad and the builder standing in front of my dad's house, opening the garage, and in the garage was that 1980 Pontiac Grand Prix. And the builder had gone and bought it on my behalf, because that was the deal. But the 2 men were in hysterics. They're laughing and laughing. I go, what's so funny? He said, well, the truth is, you had to sell 12 houses to get that car. The previous agents, if they sold 6, they would have earned the same car anyways. So that was my first lesson in real estate. So I was hooked, and I went from there into resale. By the way, I did end up selling 96 of the 101 homes. Then I went into resale, and that was a whole different experience. I was not successful. For 6 months, really had sold 1 house. But once it happened, the light bulb went on. It was just one after another after another. And the rest is history. So I went through, being the junior salesman to the top salesman, to then approaching my father saying I'd like to be a partner. And we opened up a branch and another and another and another.